So master modes are finally here and they're available for testing on the PTU. This is of course the very first iteration and things are subject to change. For those who don't know, master modes is CIG's attempt to fix the flight model, trying to make it more accessible to players and less of a joke like the current flight model is. Some of the key highlights are slower combat speeds, better control, no more 45ing, thank God, less esoteric garbage. So, in a nutshell, making the game more accessible. If you're a normal human being, this sounds like a great change. This sounds like something that you would want. Why would you want the game to be inaccessible? But if you are not a normal human being and you're a mutant that spends far more time in AC than the PU, you may not like master modes. The people that are complaining about master modes currently are those who enjoy a degree of domination over the average player. The average player who doesn't have either the peripherals or the time or the knowledge to succeed at the current broken flight model. This is what a lot of those players want. Not everybody's like that. There are a few guys that do AC that I know and I hang out with that are very good people, and they don't feel this way. But there is a very vocal, loud minority who do not want master modes, at least in its current version. They will talk about how master modes is lowering the skill of the game, how master modes is making the game more noob-friendly. And I think to a degree that is the point. The point is accessibility. And right now, with the current version of master modes, we have a more accessible Star Citizen, one that is probably the most accessible has ever been to the average player. And, as stated earlier, these people do not want that. They do not want the average player to succeed. They do not want the average player to be able to pose a threat to them in combat. They do not want a group of bad players, say 2 or 3, and I'm put bad in quotations here, to be able to oppose them anymore. They want to dominate 1v3s, 1v4s, and as I've said numerous times in previous videos, those aren't truly 1v3s or 1v4s because the current flight model does not lend itself to organization. People will try to demean organization and numbers by calling it mindless zerging and spamming or whatever, but the reality is that if you are able to organize a large group of players and put them together to fight as one cohesive unit, you should be able to win. That is not low skill. Giving directions and following directions are skills of their own, especially now, in this day and age. There also comes a point in a battle where numbers are not as noticeable or impactful once you get to a certain amount of numbers. A 1v3 or 2v4 is a lot less more impactful than 4v6 or 6v8. You see, as you go up in numbers, the numbers become less important. And this is an MMO after all, right? Or it's at least trying to be an MMO. So why are we discouraging group gameplay and numbers-based gameplay for a esports minigame that's not tied to the PU? Because that's the only thing the current flight model is supporting. And it's clearly not very popular. You could tell it's not popular by how few people are actually doing AC. Do you think they're not doing AC because they just hate PvP? Or do you think they're not doing AC because the flight model sucks and they don't stand a chance, so they don't bother getting involved? Some of the most popular games on Steam right now are PvP-centric games. Look at War Thunder, for example. Let's give that the most basic example. It's probably the closest thing here to get the Arena Commander that's not Star Citizen, is War Thunder. They are incredibly popular games, but they're also super accessible games from a mechanical point of view. In an MMO, organizational skill should take precedent over mechanical skill. And the ability to express, and this is a word people love to use right now, the phrase skill expression. Organizational skill expression should trump individual mechanical skill expression in MMOs. Period. Individual mechanical skill should not take precedent over organizational skill. Star Citizen, that does not matter. That is not an organizational, that is not a pillar of skill in Star Citizen currently, because the current flight model prevents that. The current flight model does not allow for organized flying. The current flight model does not allow for cohesive maneuvers or engagements. You may single somebody out and say, everybody jump on this guy, but the reality is you can never really, quote-unquote, merge with that guy and have a team fight. So, you know, they tend to be all over the place. It's a mess. It's not very fun to watch. It's definitely not very fun to play. But the people who currently dominate in this flight model do not want that to change. They don't want the speeds to be decreased too much. They don't want anything like that to happen. And they don't want those things to happen because, again, I'm going to say, because this is important, you have to understand why these people are on the forums saying the things they're saying, and why these clowns, the usual suspects, are making the videos they're making. They're trying to exert their influence to CIG to get things changed in a way that benefits them. You may say that I'm doing the same thing because I want a newer flight model. And to a degree, you'd be right. I'm not going to lie to you. However, my reasoning for supporting changes that make the game more accessible is because I am very interested in the success of Star Citizen. And I know that a game that is more accessible is ultimately more successful. Accessible does not have to equate to dumbing things down to mobile phone game levels. That is an absolute extreme. However, accessible must be easy to learn and difficult to master, which in my previous video I did about this, that is currently not the case of Star Citizen. It is impossible for the average player to learn, and if there's a level above impossible, it's even more impossible to master. That's my scientific, wording for that one. But I digress. So, going back to that, I want this game to be a true MMO, and I want as many players to be able to participate in this game and succeed in this game as possible. I want there to be meaningful choices in ships. I do not want there just to be the Gladius, as is the case now, or sometimes the Arrow. This game has all these ships, and they're all currently, I'd say all, majority of them are ultimately worthless. And they are worthless because of the current 319 and below flight model. If Master Modes changes this, you will see an entire new dynamic to the game. A dynamic which will promote a much healthier game that will be far more accessible and ultimately far more popular. And with more popularity comes more players. And with more players comes a better, more interesting and interactive MMO game. And if Star Citizen is meant to be an MMO, then players are going to be the content. And without the players, you don't have much of an MMO. So think about these things. Voice your opinion on the forums. Don't just use mine, form your own, but understand where I'm coming from. If I was to summarize this entire thing, I want this game to be easy to learn and difficult to master. That has always been my viewpoint. I do not want thousands of dollars of peripherals and an inordinate amount of time spent in the AC minigame to determine how good you are. I want there to be a level of skill that players can, comfortably achieve, and then I want another level of skill that players can achieve through putting in more time. That is ideally how every game should be. Star Citizen is not that. Master Modes is the first step going the right direction towards making the game that way. Master Modes is a good change. You should like it. If you don't, and if you like the current flight model, I don't know what's wrong with you.